Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Boss Rush Spotlight Podcast, the developer and creator interview series by Boss Rush. I am your host, Stephanie Klimov, part of the Boss Rush Podcast, and I am honored, thrilled, and psyched to have our guest here tonight, Dafodil. Welcome.
Hi.
Thanks for joining me tonight. How you been? How's your summer?
It's busy. I'll say it's busy.
We'll definitely get into that pretty soon, but
Yeah.
we're here to talk about the work you've done for a game that released this summer, Street Uni X, which is available on Steam. So do you want to tell us just kind of high level a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your game?
Yeah, so my name's Dafodil. I run the game development studio Dafodil and Friends. I am the sort of lead developer of Street Uni X. I'm a street unicyclist. I'm a member of Gamma Space Collaborative Studio. Yeah, I do all kinds of things.
Oh, awesome. Great. Well, awesome. So actually, speaking of getting to know you a bit more, I created a rapid fire section of just random, mostly video game related set of questions just to kind of break the ice and get to know you a little bit. So
Mhm.
the first one is because I'm a caffeine fiend, unfortunately. We all have vices. That's one of them. What is your ideal form of caffeination that helps you power through game development? Is it coffee, tea, soda, or maybe no caffeine?
Yeah, I like hot coffee. I drink it black.
Ooh, all right. There you go. Nice. When are you most productive? Are you a morning person or are you a night owl?
When I'm really in the zone, it's like from like 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. that I get most
Mhm.
of the effective work done, like witching hour.
Oh, nice. Okay. Now, as far as video games that currently are out there, and you can pick one, do you have an opinion about what's considered the most underrated or perhaps overrated game in your opinion?
Okay. I think like underrated, I would probably say Drift City Kings, which came out recently
Okay.
by Magic Duito and their studio.
Hmm.
Overrated, probably Skyrim.
I got you.
We've had enough
Um,
Skyrim.
yeah, it's time for us to venture into other amazing things. Have other games take the spotlight for open worlds and stuff.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite gaming snack?
Uh, Sublingual B12 tablets.
All right, there you go. Does it is it flavored?
Yeah, they're like a little bit fruity flavored. I have one per day. That's
Okay,
my gaming snack
there you
of
go.
choice.
No, as you could tell, some of these questions are food or drink related because I'm a glutton and
Mhm.
most of my my brain power is spent thinking of what I'm going to be eating or
Yeah.
drinking next.
Sometimes it's spoonfuls of peanut butter for me. I do enjoy snacking, but
Mhm.
I change it up.
So, right, well, last but not least, the ultimate determination of epicness and coolness is who is the superior Mario brother? Mario or
Um
Luigi? Hmm.
uh I want to say Luigi, but I also want to say Sonic the Hedgehog.
Go with
Uh
that. Go with your gut.
yes, okay. Sonic number 1.
Sonic. All right.
Yeah, look,
Perfect.
here he is all over my wall.
Well, there you have it, folks. That's the real answer. And the rest of you guys, it's okay. We can't all be perfect. Perfect. All right. Now that we got a little bit of the silliness out of the way, let's dial it back. Let's talk about you, the game, your studio. Now, Street Uni X, I do have the Steam page open here, and
Mhm.
I do just kind of like to read the summary on there for those that just maybe never have even heard about it so far. So,
Yeah, please.
classic extreme sports at their best. On one wheel, perform unicycle stunts and combos with style, smash goals, unlock new levels, characters, cheats, and more. Real uni pros, real uni tricks, and real underground jams, and real retro play that begs for one more run. It was released on June 26th of this year. It's sitting very positive of reviews. And I also noticed it's probably somewhere on the Steam page as well, in one of your trailers that the Steam Deck. So very clear that it is a Steam Deck compatible? Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's not officially Steam Deck compatible yet,
Oh.
but I worked very hard to make sure it runs, like, well on a Steam Deck. The process of getting officially
Mhm.
Steam Deck compatible, it's kind of I don't understand it, and Steam support is like it's like random. You get selected, and then we'll investigate it, so
Interesting. I hope you don't mind then, because this is going to be one of many side paths I might take. But I own a Steam Deck,
yeah.
and I love it because I've just became a handheld gamer. I can thank the Nintendo Switch for that, which is fine. And not only that, but I never really had a gaming PC, and I've become a lover of indie games. And I know Nintendo has a decent amount of indie games on it. PlayStation, Xbox, yeah, a little bit, but I feel like I can support a lot more indie devs on the Steam platform. So I got the Steam Deck. I would say in the majority of the time, the games that I play, they'll end up functioning okay or fine on it. So I'm just curious, what are things to keep in mind, or is it a heavy lift to create a game not just for Steam, but to ensure that it can execute on the deck?
Yeah, I mean, the main things I would say you need to consider are, like, that the inputs are showing the right glyphs for the
Mm-hmm.
buttons, that you, like, test it on the deck to make sure that you're getting decent performance, and if not, adjusting the default performance to work appropriately.
Hmm.
Um, Making sure that it supports the Steam Deck's aspect ratio, because most of us are rocking monitors that are, like, 1080p or whatever when the Steam Deck runs at, what, 1280 by 800, which,
A
like, is
little.
less common, but, like, some people use that resolution. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but I was lucky, like, with my game, Street Uni X, it was pretty light performance-wise, so it wasn't a big challenge to make it work on Steam Deck.
Oh, nice. Forgive the naive question, but for you, doing that little bit of extra legwork to make sure it works well on the Steam Deck because it's a handheld console, quote unquote. Do you feel like that would translate if it were to? I'm just saying, like hypothetical, if we're ever to go to like a Nintendo Switch or something, or is that still a completely different monster to
I
tackle?
I hope it would translate, and
Hmm.
I'm looking forward to doing the work to find out as soon as I,
Gotcha.
like, get, Nintendo authenticating me as a developer.
I bet that's interesting. I know nothing about it, so I guess I probably shouldn't say it with such a charged tone. I know nothing about it, but, and I
I
definitely don't wanna
also
put you.
know very
Okay.
little about it, so I'm a pretty new developer when it comes to, like,
Mm,
putting out, like, polished, finished games. Like, I've made a handful of games, but they're very niche or, like,
mhm,
alt in
yep,
terms of their presentation and, like, bar of quality, you could say.
okay.
Um,
Well,
but yes,
I would love to stay in touch with you after and, like, hear about your journey of exploring that because, again, when I saw the trailer and thing, I feel like this would be such a great game for the Nintendo Switch, or let's see what I have on the Portal, like, anything that's handheld. I think that could translate anywhere. I think that would be amazing.
I agree, and I would love to talk to you more later when, the ball is rolling more in that direction
Perfect.
with any
Yeah.
sort of certainty.
Yeah. Well, speaking of direction, let's get into the topic of, the premise of the game, which the theme is extreme sports. Like I'm thinking, which is the next statement kind of in my bullet here,
Mhm.
Tony Hawk, but we want to kind of break that mold of always thinking and every extreme sport game has to be like a Tony Hawk game. Not that they are bad. I mean, that's kind of what helped set the trend, so to speak, in the industry. But tell me about, you know, unicycling as an extreme sport, and the nuances in the genre of sports, extreme sports games.
Yeah, so, like, I mean, clearly Tony Hawk's Pro Skater had an influence
Hmm.
on me and, the entire world. It's like people who have never played a video game in their life still know what Tony Hawk's Pro Skater is,
Yes.
and
Hmm.
that's, like, a sign of its lasting impact, but at the same time, I think, like, there's all these other games that came out in that era that were either trying to do skateboarding through a different lens or different sports through a similar lens. Like, there's a couple games that stand out to me from the PlayStation 1 era, specifically Grind Session,
Okay.
made by Shaba Games, and Dave Mira Freestyle BMX, made by Z Axis. And, like, thinking back and replaying those games now gives me a bit of like extra sort of excitement about it because they are daring to do something a little bit different. And when we've all played Tony Hawk's Pro Skater over and over and
Mm,
over again, it's like neat when there's differences in the controls or the mechanics, etc.
mhm,
And so with that, like from my perspective of actually doing tricks on my unicycle and riding the unicycle regularly, I wanted to make a game that kind of like had that similar sense of like differential intrigue that
mhm,
like I feel like those other games have for me when I go back and replay
mhm,
them. So like
mhm,
I didn't want to just reproduce the like mechanics of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater exactly, and I wanted to make a game that like embodied the nuances of unicycling in a unique
mhm,
way, because I'm so familiar with how it works. Um,
mhm.
yeah.
Absolutely. A big chunk of the trailer. I was so impressed. I replayed it several times, like not in a weird, creepy way, but I'm like, oh, holy crap, that's awesome way. Um, that's you just
hmm
doing a whole bunch of amazing tricks on a unicycle. How long have you been doing this? And like, what kind of led you to, you know, kicking ass to put it frankly on a unicycle?
Well, in high school, someone I saw during like a Halloween costume contest
Mhm.
was dressed as this character, Major Bedhead from the TV show The Big Comfy Couch. He's
Mhm.
this like unicycling clown who delivers the mail. And I
Oh my
saw the
gosh.
guy ride on stage dressed as this clown on his unicycle. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And I like asked if I could try and he let me. And it didn't really happen right away. And then
Mhm.
I asked my dad for a unicycle for my birthday, and I was privileged enough to get one. And
Oh.
so I started riding every day until I learned how to ride around the block. And that was like about 15 or 16 years ago, I think, if I remember
Mhm.
correctly. And then it kind of went into the garage for a little while, and I was trying to learn to skateboard, and like I was throwing kick flips and like trying to land them.
Mhm.
And like I can ollie okay, and it's fun to flow around a park on a skateboard, but I just kept like hurting myself and getting
Mhm.
demotivated. And then I, on a whim, searched extreme unicycling and discovered that there's this whole world of like street urban trials unicycling where people are doing like all kinds of tricks that I didn't even know were possible. So I was like, okay, I'm going to hard pivot to unicycles
Mhm.
now because I think I can do that. And so I took the unicycle out of the garage. I started practicing hops and jumps and 180s and stuff until I broke that unicycle, got another unicycle, did the same thing and broke that one. And by now I had realized like what what parts I needed for a unicycle to like be robust and hold up. And I've been
Okay.
riding the
Mhm.
sort of same setup since around then. And so yeah, like 6 or 7 years of like awareness and dedication to street
Uh,
unicycling. And I also use it to get around like everywhere. So that's like a big part of making it this holistic part of my life.
I was gonna say there's just so many aspects of it. It's not just I don't know this one like random hobby that you do on occasion. I think that's amazing. I wish. Okay, there's just like another side tangent. I promise I'll keep this one short.
No,
Like
no, it's
I,
okay.
I wish a lot of us would accept other alternative means of transportation. I understand that sometimes it's not always feasible, but I think I know we're getting a little bit better with bicycles and scooters in the cities, but I don't know. I just think it's great when there's dedication to, try something else, and the fact that you utilize that just in everyday life for regular transport or just when you want to do cool tricks.
Yeah. And like, yeah, I live in a place where I'm lucky enough that most of the like things I need to pick up or like stop by day
Mhm,
to day are close enough that I can
mhm,
unicycle to them. Like it's within like
mhm,
10 or 15 blocks or whatever.
mhm,
And I also don't have a driver's license. So I
mhm,
don't drive cars.
mhm, mhm.
So I'd like to have some wheels in my life.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Um, Now I know you mentioned that you were looking up, whether there's a community. right, out
Mhm.
there. And I noticed in the trailer too that you have there's people you can select, characters. Are they actually based off of real
Yeah.
cyclists?
Yeah,
That's
the
what I
game
thought,
has,
but I didn't
like
wanna make the assumption.
yeah, they're real pro unicyclists from sort of all around the world.
That is
There's
excellent.
riders from Denmark, from Germany, from the United States, um, kind of all over. It's real
That's really
pros,
neat.
real tricks.
No, and that's it's not that I didn't believe the description, but it's even more impressive to hear it from you because I just I feel it gives the game even it has substance, but even I don't know how else to explain it, even more substance that, there is a real community out there, there's real pros out there. I don't know, it just oh man, that is really
Yeah.
impressive.
It's funny, like, when I'm showing people the game in
Mhm.
person and they see the character select screen, it's really common for them to be like, "So these are just like your friends, right?" And I'm like, "Well, no. Like, I actually haven't met some of these people in real life. They're just like pro unicyclists that I reached out to and like wanted to be in the game."
It's
And some
excellent. It
of them are
must
like putting out like really dope videos like constantly. Like Mimo Seedler especially, he's currently like I think he's in LA like meeting with
Mhm,
some pro skateboarders and scooter riders to like
mhm.
collab on some stuff. He like tours with the circus. It's like they're doing mind-blowing
Amazing.
stuff. Look up the riders on YouTube and stuff when you get home
Will do.
or when you're done
Wow, and
watching this video.
yeah, and it helps that community as well. So when people play this game and they look up these individuals, it kind of in a positive way a gateway to
Mhm.
another lifestyle. That's amazing. Now, I bet you had a lot of fun adjusting or creating stats because
Mhm.
I believe that each character you select has pros and cons to your style, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the I actually asked or I told the riders, You have 35 stat points. Here's the stat categories.
Hmm.
Distribute them yourself, and that's what your stats will be in the game." So the
You let
riders
them
chose
pick
their
their
own
own.
stats. Yeah.
I love that. Oh my goodness.
And they also wrote their own like greeting and like congratulations text messages that you get sent as you play the game through the like
Right.
game's like phone aesthetic thing. So I tried to give them as much of their own voice as possible.
Okay, everybody that's listening, this is legit. You have to check this out. I'm gonna go and play this, and I'm gonna have to play as every single person now. That's great. Well, speaking of playing, then I again see I'm sometimes I'm like the tangent person, but
I
so we
welcome it.
covered
We're all nodes of the rhizome.
exactly that we need to accept that. That's the norm. But yeah, we covered extreme sports. We covered the history of Tony Hawk and the other non Tony Hawk, but just as important games. Street unicycling. But now back to the game itself, Street Uni X.
Uh-huh.
Tell the audience how does the game itself subvert the expectations of the genre?
Yeah, so um, like I was sort of saying earlier, unicycling is different from skateboarding.
Hmm.
And as a result of that, the controls are different. So
Hmm.
like you can expect to jump in and have some level of like competency within the systems once you learn the controls and how they're different. But the controls are different slightly. Like with unicycling, you can grind on either side of the unicycle on like the
Mm,
right pedal or the left pedal, and you can rail ride by putting your tire on the rail. So there's two grind buttons, so you can grind on either side of the rail
okay.
or press both of them to do a rail ride. And unicycling has like a fixed gear, so like you're always having to pedal to ride. You don't get the like bonus of just kind of cruising like on a skateboard.
Mm,
So like I considered that when implementing the movement. So it kind of works more like a platformer in as much as you have to hold forward to ride forward.
mhm.
Um, and like there's other little things like
I was gonna
the
say, like, tell me some of some of the things that we can expect to find in there. Because a few things that popped in my head that I thought were very cool from the trailer was you have to spell out like a word. You
yeah.
collect the letters throughout, and there's also like mini missions. I think one like you hit an object and says like you unclogged something, and there's like
Mhm.
a certain checklist of things to do.
Yeah, so, like yeah, I mean, each level has a list of goals, kind of like you'd expect from a game in this genre,
Mhm.
but I
Yeah.
tried to, like, not just, like, reproduce the levels of
Mhm.
and the goals of the previous games, but I wanted some in there, like, collect the trick
Yeah.
letters and, like,
Mhm.
find the Wi-Fi hotspot, but there's other things like contextual stuff that make use of the game's unique mechanics, like, in one of the levels, you have to wall tap on these machines to open some doors. And wall
Mhm.
tapping is a trick sort of unique to unicycling,
Okay.
unlike wall riding and skateboarding, for example.
I see. Got it. Okay. Very, very interesting. Now, are you able to tell me how many levels are there available in the game, and what was your most favorite one to make?
Well, there is 4 plus.
Okay.
There might be a secret or 2.
Gotcha. Okay.
Um, and I quite like the experience of designing levels. So, like, let me see. There's, like, a number of the levels include spaces that are directly inspired by real places that I like to ride my unicycle or that have some,
Mhm.
like, meaningful connection to me in terms of my community. Like, um, one of the levels downtown, which I think is maybe one of the stronger levels in the game, has an old cafe an old diner that I used to sit down at prior to the COVID wave that affected all our
Mhm.
lives. I would sit down
Mhm.
at the bar and work on the game there, like in the diner,
Mhm.
and I thought I'd like commemorate them by having I like took photos of the place and actually put it in the level.
Oh, that's
Um,
nice.
and that level is kind of like a kit bash of like different spaces in my community and in the city here. Um, and like finding the flow between those different spaces and kind of like mediating
Mm.
the real space through the like dream of game design, um
Mhm.
and like making it so that it's not just the skate park from downtown Vancouver. It's like changed up a little bit to cater to the game's mechanics and what's unique about unicycling rather than just remaking it one to one in the game space.
Mhm. Did you have a
Um,
lot of fun translating that to that PS1 aesthetic?
yeah, there's like aspects of it that is really fun, and there's aspects of it that's kind of tedious.
Mm.
Um, it's really fun to like design out the space in my sketchbook and like come up with ways that things could be connected and iterate and reiterate. Um, but also like targeting the PS1 aesthetic, while it's a benefit because things don't have to be as high poly, things don't have to have as like detailed textures necessarily. Um, because of the way that textures are mapped, they can like
Mm.
morph in a way when you're like seeing them at obscure angles, depending on the
Oh, okay.
complexity of the geometry. So
Okay.
like I needed to like segment each flat surface into multiple flat surfaces of like below a certain size so that the like PS1 effects weren't too jarring when you have them turned on.
I
Um,
see. So
but you
people
can
should.
yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say but you can turn them off if you want.
Okay. No, I was only gonna say, people that means people should never really make the assumption like, oh, PS1 aesthetic, that's just like must be super easy because it's like an old art style, so to speak. But there's definitely a lot of thought that you need to put into it to ensure that the modern sensibilities would still apply, right?
Yeah. And like
Mm,
being consistent with the vision, like depending on how deep you want to go down the rabbit hole of like authenticity to
mm,
the original hardware. Like, for example, I'm not using distance fog in this game, which is something that
mm.
like was necessary in old PS1
Yeah.
games. And I don't really downscale the UI just for readability's sake. Um,
Mhm,
and like but I did stay within certain limits of like poly count when
mhm.
modeling the characters or the props and things like that.
Excellent. Well, that's a perfect segue to to continue the conversation about the PS1 aesthetic, and then I'll get to music because that also loved what I was hearing. I was just
Yeah,
jamming out to that. Um, so how does Street Uni X pay homage to that generation, not just as visuals? I know you just kind of got into it by the way you're
yeah.
treating with so much respect, but I would love for you to elaborate it a bit more. Um, Again, homage to the generation, because I also know that I don't know about you. I might have a limited perspective, but I do see the PS1 aesthetic popping up a lot more these days.
Yeah, I think like the PS1 aesthetic as a visual aesthetic is accessible because
Mhm,
it like it's a bit easier to create a 3D model that looks some kind of cool when you are limited in the like amount of polygons or the amount of like pixels on your texture. But for me, like the aesthetic goes deeper than just visuals. Like aesthetics is also about um, how sound effects are used and when they're used, how the mechanics feel to interact, like the physics systems, especially. Like, so I made this game with Unity, and
mhm,
I didn't. Or I made a conscious effort not to rely on Unity's like rigid body physics to drive the player's movement. I was really
okay.
like I was really set on writing the collision detection myself so that it
Mm,
would have that game feel of like those previous eras of games, like using like raycast hit detection and like because those moments of where like your character kind of like pops out of the wall in a certain way when you come at it at a
mhm,
particular angle, or like the like feeling of sort of like deterministic reproducibility of the movement is important in my opinion to how these kinds of games play. And
uh,
when things are too much in the way of like letting the kind of like auto magic physics systems throw the character around, I feel like it takes away some agency from the player in terms of like how tight and snappy and expressive the controls can feel, even though technically it means you can like move around in maybe more quote realistic ways. It games aren't all about realism.
no, not always, and I
Yeah.
wouldn't want it to be that way because that's why I go play games sometimes to escape reality sometimes, but I get what you mean, at least I believe I am, because you don't wanna be kind of yanked out of the immersion because you're it seems like you're highly crafting, you know, I don't wanna reduce it to the word the vibe, but it's a very particular vibe, you know?
Oh yeah, it is all about the vibe. And
Yeah.
like that runs through not just the mechanics too. Like there's like the pause menu is like a facsimile of the flip phones and slide phones of
Yeah.
the era, and like the front end menu has like bits of like old tech involved, and like the
Mm,
tutorial is like very much paying homage to certain games. Like I don't want to spoil too
but yeah,
much, but like
play it to
you'll
find
see
out.
it when you play it. Like you'll be like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, this reminds me of this other game that I played a long time ago.
Oh my goodness, it sounds like immersion heaven. Okay, well, let's keep the train rolling. Immersion heaven. So,
Immersion heaven.
um, sound effects. Well, let's talk sound effects and then also soundtrack. I mean,
Yeah.
so
Um yeah,
do you
just
make your
generally.
own? I don't know how that works. Yeah, sorry, I just
Yeah, yeah.
your
So my
process.
I worked with an old friend. His
Mhm.
name's Jesse
Okay.
Kramer. He did the sound design for the game. I've known him since high school. When I first started this project, it was less of a this is going to be a professional game and more of like a
Mm,
this is a casual release thing.
mhm.
I knew that he was going to school for audio engineering, and I was like, "Yo, Jesse, do you want to like work together with me to make sounds for some kind of like street unicycling game, maybe?" And so we met up. We went to the skate park, and I grinded some ledges and rails, and he brought his Zoom mic and recorded some sounds there, some sounds of the tire landing on the ground. And then I also gave him a list of other sounds that I needed, and he like used his skills as a sound designer to like do the best job he could on like making the other sounds, so like the UI sounds of like the clanks
Hmm.
and like just those like sounds of like, I don't know, they're not actually from unicycles or like from doing tricks or anything, but they're like these, they catch the vibe of like
Yeah.
parts being cranked or like
Hmm.
metal being grinded on.
Right. Right.
Um and that was another thing too, like making the sounds of the different surfaces you can grind on
Mm-hmm.
was interesting. We had lots of iteration between like, okay, I like how this one sounds when you enter onto it, but like inner loop, like it sounds like a particular way that maybe needs to change, and like the dismount sound works really well, so let's keep that kind of thing.
Excellent. I always have a lot of appreciation when sound effects, come from, when I say a very realistic source, instead of just using kind of what's maybe perhaps readily available, which, nothing wrong with that either. So, but that's great. They're able to actually record kind of a lot of your own sound effects. That's great.
Yeah. And it was Jesse's like first time working on a game, so he was learning a
Mm,
lot about like what is important to have that like foot dipped in realism compared to like some of the other sounds, like the goal completion sounds or like the
mm,
like level complete sounds, to like be more imaginative and kind of abstract with it.
mm. Now, I usually save this question for last, but I just have to like blurt out my thought because when you're talking about, well, sound effects, but now we're talking about music.
Uh-huh.
I always love asking developers if you're to have your own collector's or deluxe edition, like what would you love? What would be your ideal collector's thing would be? And I'm thinking this game would do so well with its own like vinyl. I would
Uh-huh.
love that, or just like a sound, like a physical soundtrack CD, maybe more of that time, I guess. Like yeah, a CD or vinyl or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
am a music head. Right here out of frame is my record collection. Right here on my wall is my
Hey,
tape collection.
there you
And
go.
I think it would be dope to include a like physical release of the soundtrack on tape, a physical release of the soundtrack on vinyl. There is some hoops to jump through there, and I'm still sort of coordinating some things with some of the bands, but
Yeah.
I would love that to happen, and I maybe it will happen one day, real soon.
Exactly. So that's why everybody needs to support Daffodil and Friends and
Yeah,
Wishlist and or buy and or review and or boost just to kind of help the process along. Just saying.
yeah, all of the above if you want and
Yeah,
care about me and my
sky's the
game.
limit. Who's stopping you? Now you say
But
you
yeah,
work
I
with some
mean, oh
bands.
no, yes,
Yeah. So tell me.
we're on the same wavelength
All right,
here.
perfect. Go. Don't let
Uh,
me stop you.
the 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 music featured in the game, the music that plays in game when you're riding, is like mostly local punk, ska, screamo bands from my
Mhm.
area. So
Yeah.
like they're bands that I've seen perform live or that I've been friends with for a while, or that I just genuinely care about their music. So there's a couple of the bands where I would be watching them perform at a concert, opening for somebody that I was there to see, and realize, oh dang, their music would be perfect for my
Mhm.
game. So I would go up and talk to them after the concert and be like, hey, like I'm making this game. It's kind of like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. It's a street unicycling game, and I would love it if your music was on the soundtrack. And almost universally, people are like, that's sick. I would love to. And
Oh,
so
nice.
that's like the music that's like, the in-game music. And
Mhm.
then there's the like main menu and the like interstitial like goal cams music. I worked with a musician called R23X
Yeah.
to get those composed and to like make use of some of his older tracks. I've been a fan of his for a long time, and over the past few years, just kind of living in similar neighborhoods and
Mhm.
being in similar online circles, we've kind of become friends and collaborators. So
Mhm.
this game is kind of like I sort of said earlier, it's like the holistic unification of
Mhm.
like my communities and my cares and my like interests. So yeah.
Well, you mentioned the buzzword because we're just like going from topic to topic pretty well actually. So I was going to ask all about your collaborators, which I know you just mentioned. You know those bands. And I know it's not a collaboration, but like you taking real life examples of settings and applying them. So just generally, holistically speaking, what is it like working with various collaborators, part of the team, or extended community? Any stories that you like to share, stuff like that.
Um yeah, I mean it's great. It's like really a treat to get to work so like directly with people in my community that I've appreciated
Mhm,
the work of or been friends with and wanted to like see them thrive. Like the some of the 3D art in the game in terms of like prop modeling and like some of the like clutter that you find in the levels that like
mhm,
really give the levels a sense of place were done by my friend Brody. So when you launch the game, it says a game by Daffodil with help from Brody and Jesse and friends. So
mhm,
Brody's one key collaborator. He worked with me on a previous game called Executive Towers years ago that you
mhm.
can find on my itch page.
Okay.
Um, uh, and just like giving him an opportunity to do more 3D modeling and work with him is like it just feels really good. And like um the logo was designed by someone I was inspired by and seeing online a lot called SCJ. I
Mhm,
commissioned them to create the logo for Street Uni X. And like I mean the bands are from my local community. The like I guess like also a couple of years ago I received some funding from Weird Ghosts and that really enabled my ability to like prioritize and be able to compensate the
mhm,
folks that I've worked with, which
mhm,
feels really good to like help support artists and musicians in
yep,
my local scene. And through Weird Ghosts, I was also connected to Gamma Space, who also
mhm,
really helps me out in terms of like they're acting as my publisher. They like offer development support. Like many members of Gamma Space have helped me with bits and bobs throughout developing the game. Like if I'm struggling with like a programming concern or like
mhm,
I need some extra testing on a particular platform in order to
mhm.
like figure out how to fix a bug. Like they're so willing to like step up and help me out, and it's like it's really a privilege. It's amazing.
It's heartwarming to hear stuff like this where not only whether it's, I don't know, a game, an indie film, or a book, to be able to have the community, as I say, support you, and you can also give back as well. Not remotely in the same space, but I have published some novels, and I wanted to work really closely with a local independent publisher, um, an independent, cover artist, and like even though like it's not like I'm going to be able to boost them too much, but I just feel like rising tide lifts all boats. We're all in this together. If we can all help each other out, I don't know. It's refreshing to hear when we're just drowned out by a lot of triple A's, which there's nothing wrong with triple A's because I love me my Zelda and my Ghost of Tsushima, but
Yeah, you can make a cool big game with a big budget.
exactly, exactly. So I think that's a big reason why I would say in the last 4 years, I've kind of focused way more in the indie developer side of things. I want to get to know them, talk to them more, and I love speaking them in the beginning, and then after like a few years, see where they are at. I interviewed some humble onion in their game, Smooshy Come Home. I played the
Okay,
game, I reviewed it. It's an adorable little adventure platformer, and now he's getting his game's getting a limited physical release by Super Rare, and I just pre-ordered that.
cool.
Yeah. So I just love seeing everybody's journey and hearing the stories behind it because I feel like a lot of us in the general community don't get to hear it, not to their fault, but there's a lot of voices out there and
Yeah,
many, you know.
and so much of like what goes on in developing games doesn't get included either in the game or like isn't obvious through looking at like the store page or whatever.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
when working independently on a game, being an indie, as they say, like you kind of have to lean into and rely on your community in order to make it happen for it to be sustainable and for you to be able to like actually garner the resources required and the time and well-being required to like
Mhm.
finish making the thing. Though like, some people are lucky to have received like generational wealth or whatever that they don't have to lean as
Yeah.
hard, but I'm a community. I'm
Mhm.
very community headed. Community is so important to me. Like every
I love
aspect
it.
of my life, I try to like center community.
Mm. I want to touch base with you off air again, like to get a lot of the names of those around you that you worked with, because I also write for our website, and I would love to summarize this pod because this will be a podcast episode. But I like
Yeah.
to summarize some points and give them a name on our website and just kind of shout them all out because I think that would be wonderful to do.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure they'd appreciate it too.
Yeah. All right. So we're kind of, winding down a little bit, but all of this has gotten me curious about, and I probably should ask it at the beginning, but anyway, how long have you been in game development, and were you self-taught, or did, like, tell me a bit of like how you got to where you are now?
Yeah. So I was like trying to teach myself how to make games for a while using websites like Code Academy and stuff like that. Um, Eventually, I kind of hit the limit of what I was able to teach myself. And so in around 2014 or 2015, I went to school for programming for games, web, and mobile.
Mhm.
That was the name of the program. And um, I was able to afford that through student loans, which I'm still paying off, and
Hey.
some like grants that I received. I was lucky to
Mhm.
receive. Um, and basically, I mean, I've played games for most of my life. I remember fiddling around with Flash when I was like 10 or 11 years old, trying to make games on there, learning ActionScript. Um, I remember making levels in Tony Hawk's Underground too, like making
Mhm.
goals and trying to wrap things together with some sort of story.
Mhm.
And I've always had an interest in like lower budget, kind of weirder, like alt games. So
Mhm.
like I've always kind of known that games was something that I would have as a part of my like focus for my entire
Mhm.
life. And so after I graduated school, I kind of jumped right into my own projects. So, like I said, I made Executive Towers with Brody
Mhm.
and a local musician called Jade Statues. It's the official game of the album.
Mhm.
I made a sort of anti-game or like non-game called Virtua Blinds. That's kind of like a blinds simulator,
Uh-huh.
sort of like Venetian blinds. And there's like a
Okay.
room full of things that you can interact with, and
Uh,
I don't know. Check it out if you want. And like,
yes.
I love
Yes.
I love puzzle games, so I have a
Uh-huh.
handful of like prototypes of like puzzles
Uh-huh.
and puzzle platformers that have come like I made a game in Pico 8 called Beak that like you carry dogs to their bed because it's past their bedtime and you gotta like you're a little bird, like a
I love
magpie.
that. I love that.
Yeah.
I love it all.
And I have many more ideas, many games I want to make, many games I might like to revisit and polish and
Okay.
complete at one point, but
Okay.
games are a big part of my life.
That's all. Yeah, I can hear when you're talking about it and just playing around with things. It starts with a passion. Obviously, you get to a point where you need to kind of actually, cut your teeth on the trade, so to speak, but I definitely can sense and feel the passion there. Now, as far as Street Uni X ballpark, how long did it take you from like concept to completion? I know I'm sure it's not like a complete straight timeline, right? But
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was slow going at first. It was like in my
mhm,
spare time during off
mhm,
time from day jobs and stuff,
yeah.
but it took about 6 years
Mhm,
to since starting it to
mhm,
finish it. Like about 6 years ago or nearly 7
okay.
years ago now, I guess. I created the first unicycle model. I connected with a friend of mine to help rig a character to like be attached to the model. Then I brought that into Unity, uh, worked on it as much as I could with as much resources as I could until eventually getting, like I said earlier, the funding from Weird Ghosts, which really enabled me to prioritize it and focus full time
Mhm.
and bring it to the level of polish that I
That
ended
it
up thinking
deserves.
it deserves. But I was going to work on it anyways because I'm obsessed with unicycling and I think this game needed to be made. So
Mhm. And now it is
here we
brought forth
are.
into the universe.
And
Yeah.
now I'm getting interviewed by Boss Rush Media.
And for nothing for nothing, I'm just saying it. I don't know. I don't know what you see in the email exchanges, but our CEO chimed in. He goes, "This game looks so sick. I can't wait to play this." And let me tell you, he is very, very picky with the games. When we do our book club recordings, half the time he's like, "I hate this game. I don't want to play this game." So for him to be like, "Man, this looks so cool. I want to play this." I just want to share that with you. Like we're already budding a little fan base here.
That's dope. I hope it lives up to his expectations.
Oh, I bet it will. I know I
Yeah.
myself am definitely going to give this a shot too. Um, anything else that you want to either plug or talk about before we kind of wind down?
Um Not really. I mean, purchase Street Uni X. Try the
Yep.
demo if you want. There's a free demo on Steam.
See,
Um,
there's no excuse. You
yeah.
can wish list, free demo, game.
If you buy it and you like it, please leave a review. It
Mhm,
really helps. I want to get to that like very positive
mhm.
zone, which I don't know. I think you need some amount of reviews before it
I
says
see.
that.
Okay.
But also like you can follow me online if you
Oh,
want.
yes. Yes,
I'm
please share. Yeah.
the game is Street Uni X on most platforms. If you want to follow me doing unicycle tricks and posting selfies, you can follow me on Instagram at Dafodil with 5 Fs. Um, I'm on the Forsaken Hell site, formerly known as Twitter, as Daffodil. I stream game dev and music sometimes on Twitch as Daffodil, and I'm on co-host as just Daffodil.
Perfect. Awesome. So everybody, I want you to check all that out. Check Daffodil out and the game Street Uni X. And now it's time for me to put everyone to sleep with just a little bit of housekeeping before we say our goodbyes. If you want to support the Boss Rush podcast and the Boss Rush Network, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/Boss Rush Network at the tier that's right for you, earning perks such as early ad-free access to this and other podcasts, exclusive access to spotlight interview access threads, voting rights on video game book club, pick the next game Corey will hate, and more. That's patreon.com/Boss Rush Network. I always kind of have a hard time saying that real quick. As always, your listenership and viewership is always enough for us. If you're watching this video on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and leave us a thumbs up or a comment. If you're listening on podcast services like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please consider leaving us a 5-star and a review. We did not talk about Elden Ring, so we definitely do not deserve a 2-star or 1-star review, whatever had happened. One time we talked about Elden Ring on an episode. We didn't even say anything bad about it. We were just like, "Oh, we don't know what's making this really great." Like nothing negative, and someone gave us a 1 or 2-star review like, "They don't like Elden Ring. They
I can't
suck."
believe you didn't like the game that I love. You have a different opinion than me.
I know. Different opinions, the worst thing in the world. Uh my little pitch here. Almost done, I promise. Check out
Mhm.
our merch on TeePublic with over 50 designs to rep your favorite shows and more. I'm packed for PAX West. I'm leaving in a few days, and I have 6 Box Rush related outfits. It's a little embarrassing. And last but not least, you can check out all of our content, reviews, articles, and more on bossrush.net. So, thank you so much for watching or listening to the Boss Rush Spotlight podcast. Daffodil, it was a pleasure and honor speaking with you and getting to know you and your game. I'm looking forward to seeing, your future projects and all the other cool stuff that you do.
Likewise, I really appreciate this opportunity to be on the show and to share in my creative work.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, have a great night.
Bye.
If you want to see how you can become a Patreon producer, head on over to patreon.com/BossRushNetwork. The Patreon producers for this month are Adriel Munger, Austin Campbell, Celeste Roberts, Christian S., Sana Dierig, Francisco Santillan, Matthew Keel, and Todd Oxtra. Thanks for your continued support of the Boss Rush Network.